Hello, and welcome to the first video in a 7-part series where we delve deep into each one of the 7 Hermetic principles. We also have a video that briefly introduces all of the 7 principles. Feel free to check it out. There will be a link to it in the description and at the end screen. The first Hermetic principle, known as the Principle of Mentalism, is a concept that is foundational to Hermetic philosophy. It asserts that the all is mind, the universe is mental. This principle suggests that everything we perceive and experience is a mental construct, originating from a single, infinite, and omnipresent consciousness, often referred to as the all. To understand the significance of this idea, imagine for a moment that the universe itself exists within a grand mind. Just as your thoughts create and shape your inner world, the entire universe exists as a thought form within the mind of the all, which can be regarded as God, but entirely without the elements of anthropomorphism. This does not necessarily mean the world around you is an illusion or less real, even if it could. What it does mean is that its essence is rooted in consciousness rather than physical matter. The concept encourages you to see beyond the material and recognize that reality, at its core, is mental in nature. The origins of the principle of mentalism can be traced to the earliest expressions of mystical and esoteric thought, long before formal Hermetic texts were written. While the Kybalion popularized the idea in the 20th century, the essence of this principle existed within ancient traditions that viewed consciousness as the fundamental ground of reality. Ancient civilizations, particularly those of Egypt and Mesopotamia, held the belief that creation emerged from divine thought or intention. In Egyptian cosmology, the universe was often depicted as the result of the creative word or thought of deities like Ptah, whose mind and speech brought form to existence. This aligns with the concept that the universe is mental at its core, shaped by a higher consciousness. The Greeks, inheriting and adapting ideas from Egypt, further refined this understanding. Philosophers such as Pythagoras and Heraclitus explored the notion that logos, divine reason or thought, underpins the structure of the cosmos. This early articulation of mental causality laid the foundation for what would later be framed as Hermeticism. In parallel, Eastern philosophies like Hinduism and Buddhism also articulated ideas that resonate with this concept. In the Hindu tradition, the concept of Maya suggests that the physical world is shaped by divine mental energy, while Buddha's teachings emphasize that perception constructs reality, reinforcing the idea that the mind holds transformative power over experience. Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary figurehead of Hermeticism, became associated with a synthesis of these ancient beliefs. His teachings, which surfaced prominently during the Hellenistic period, conveyed the idea that the universe operates within the mind of a divine source. This belief spread alongside the mystery schools of Alexandria, where Egyptian and Greek wisdom traditions converged. During the Islamic Golden Age, Hermetic texts were translated into Arabic, preserving and expanding on the principle of mentalism. These texts influenced scholars in Persia and the broader Middle East, embedding Hermetic ideas within Sufi mysticism, which also emphasized the mental and spiritual nature of existence. By the time the Renaissance arrived, the rediscovery of Hermetic writings in Europe reignited interest in the ancient belief that the universe reflects the divine mind. Alchemists and early scientists integrated this view into their explorations, seeing nature as a manifestation of hidden mental and spiritual forces. Ultimately, the principle of mentalism reflects a universal insight that emerged independently across cultures and epochs, underscoring the timeless understanding that thought, consciousness, and reality are inseparably linked. Mentalism means that everything that you see, feel, and experience exists within the mind of the all, and because you are part of this creation, you share in that same universal consciousness. The principle encourages a shift in how we perceive not only the world, but also our place within it. The idea that all things arise from the same source dismantles the rigid boundaries we often assume exist between ourselves and the external world. These separations, between the physical and the spiritual, life and death, or even between individuals, are seen as temporary and relative, part of the mental framework we use to make sense of experience. However, they do not reflect the deeper truth that underpins all existence. When you begin to grasp this, the notion of isolation starts to fade. If the entire universe is a mental construct within the mind of the all, then everything you encounter, from the smallest detail to the grandest experience, exists as part of the same vast mental field. This understanding opens the door to seeing yourself not as moving through the universe, but as an inseparable expression of it. You are not just living in the world, in a sense, lives within you as much as you live within it. This dissolves the idea of separation, replacing it with the recognition that what affects one aspect of reality inevitably affects the whole. The interplay between your mental state and the world around you becomes clearer through this perspective. When the external world is viewed as a reflection of the inner world, it becomes evident that the conditions you encounter are closely tied to the dominant thoughts and emotions you cultivate. There is a subtle but constant feedback loop at work, reinforcing the idea that your consciousness shapes your experience in ways that may not always be immediately visible, but accumulate over time. Your thoughts ripple outward, interacting with the broader mental reality. When these thoughts align with clarity, purpose, and openness, the external world begins to organize itself in response. This is not a forceful act of will, but a natural unfolding, like light dispersing darkness. The universe mirrors your internal condition, not as a reward or punishment, but as an intrinsic quality of how consciousness operates. This recognition shifts the focus inward. Rather than attempting to change external circumstances directly, the principle of mentalism invites you to observe and transform the mental patterns that give rise to those circumstances. Through this process, growth is not seen as something to pursue in the outside world, but as something cultivated from within, gradually radiating outward to influence the broader experience of life. This understanding dissolves the sense of division between ourselves and the world around us, illuminating the interconnected nature of existence. If all arises from one source, then even opposition or conflict is part of the same mental fabric, merely different expressions of unity. The idea that the universe operates within the mental realm means that by shifting your internal state, you can influence the conditions of your life. Mental transmutation, a key Hermetic practice, focuses on refining and redirecting thought patterns to reshape experiences. It encourages awareness of the mental habits that create external conditions, allowing you to replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones, thereby initiating meaningful change. Recognizing that all external manifestations stem from the mind fosters greater compassion and patience. When you understand that those around you, even those in disagreement, are reflections of the all, conflict becomes less about opposition and more about varying perspectives within the same shared consciousness. This lessens the impulse to judge or resist and cultivates a more harmonious approach to life. This understanding is part of our moving away from interactions based in the ego into interactions from this higher perspective. Here, we realize that nothing truly meaningful can ever be acquired at the expense of something that is truly meaningful to someone else. We've for a very long time been programmed into a mindset of trying to get as many experiences and possessions as possible out of life, that social status holds an intrinsic value, and that our being in the world by necessity is characterized by conflicts, competition, and debating. What we are now moving into is an era where we approach this from a more mature perspective. We will still have egos, but instead of looking at our egos as sources of guidance, we will instead look at their wills as obstacles in the way of a more objective view of ourselves and the world, true understanding, and harmonious cooperation. Instead of battling others to give our egos what they want, we will instead need to take responsibility for when our egos disturb our roles as parts of the greater whole, and we will not need any external authorities to force us to do so, since we will know that this, first and foremost, is something that benefits us. By engaging with the principle of mentalism, you begin to view personal growth and external challenges as extensions of mental processes. The power to shape life lies not in controlling circumstances directly, but in mastering the internal landscape from which those circumstances arise. Through consistent practice, this insight reshapes how you perceive the world and how the world responds to you, reinforcing the dynamic relationship between thought and reality. In summary, the principle of mentalism teaches that the universe is fundamentally mental, existing as a manifestation of a single, universal consciousness known as the All. This principle reveals that reality, as we experience it, is shaped by thought, and that the external world reflects our internal mental state. The boundaries we perceive between self and others, the physical and spiritual, are mental constructs rather than absolute divisions. Recognizing this interconnectedness fosters a sense of unity, dissolving the illusion of separation and encouraging a more compassionate and mindful approach to life. By understanding that all is part of the same universal mind, you begin to see yourself not as separate from the world, but as an active participant in shaping it. Persistent focus and intention gradually influence external conditions, aligning your experience with the dominant patterns of thought you cultivate. This perspective shifts the emphasis from controlling external circumstances to mastering your inner world, highlighting the profound role of mental discipline in transforming life. Ultimately, the principle of mentalism serves as a reminder that everything you encounter is part of a shared consciousness. If what you've heard in this video resonates with you, you are invited to ponder this and reflect upon what consequences this perspective has for your own life. It's easy to continue along the same path, living out the same habitual patterns as we always have, even if our understanding of reality and ourselves has radically shifted. It might seem self-evident that it's one thing to understand something and another to draw the proper consequences from it. But how often do we truly live this understanding? What you see playing out in the world today, whether in fiction or real life, is separate egos interacting with other separate egos, and none of us are these egos that we've learned to identify with. The principle of mentalism invites you to rise above this level of consciousness and to approach life from a higher, truer perspective of oneness that is shared within the same infinite consciousness. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.